Guys, it's Lisa. Stevie and I are going to... First, he's trying to block me out. Hey guys, it's Lisa. Stevie and I are going to demonstrate the correct way to braid and put up a long show horse's tail. He's thrilled. We'll be back in a minute on the other end. Hey, I'm back. So I've already washed and dried Stevie's tail, picked it out, put lots of cowboy magic in it because that is the miracle product for horse tails. I call it liquid gold because it's so freaking expensive. But it is a really good detangler, and it keeps everything nice and free of tangles as you're trying to sort through it and get it braided up. I start out by actually separating what we call feathers. They're the shorter hairs in the horse's tail. They don't go all the way to the bottom. So we separate them out, and it really depends on the horse, how many feathers. And some horses have really short feathers, some horses have really long feathers that can be, hock length or more. But as long as they're not the ones that go all the way to the bottom, you want to separate them out, because otherwise they're not going to stay in the braid anyway, and they can get snagged or ripped out, catching them on something in their stall, and that's not what you want. You're putting the horse's tail up to protect it and keep it safe and grow, and if you put it up sloppy and have hairs that can grab, then you're going to have that breakage. So you want to start by separating the tail into 3 sections. The length of the tail, separated just like you would any braid. And you want to, 2 things here are really important. That you want to make sure that the horse's, the braid is hanging just as it would if it were just loose hair. So you don't want to braid your tail up and back, and you don't want to, you want the braid to be hanging as naturally as possible, so that it's just like it would be if it were loose hair, and it's not going to irritate the horse as long as it's hanging pretty naturally. You also want to start by finding the horse's tailbone. The end of Stevie's tailbone is right here, and so at the top of my thumb. And so I'm starting my braid about 1 inch or so below that point. And I'm going to start a little bit loose, because when we wrap it up later, you'll see how that is going to help if we have the top part of the braid a little bit loose. But not too loose, because no matter how tight you braid it, it's going to loosen up a little bit over time. So if you want to keep your tail up for a long time, you want to make sure your braid is nice and neat and tight, especially as you get towards the bottom. So I'm going to braid to the end of this, and you don't need to watch that, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I'm done with my braid. I've put a rubber band on the end of the braid, and I've wrapped it around several times to make sure it stays put. I'm going to go ahead and take the end of the braid, and we wrapped it loosely so that I could come back and pull the end of this braid through the very top of the braid and loop it up through there. And I like to leave about, a hand's length, about 5 or 6 inches, maybe a little bit less, depending on the horse's tail, of course. If you have a horse with a really long, thick tail, you might want it to be a little bit longer so that it's not quite so thick and it doesn't become a weapon in fly season. But anyway, so I'm going to need to take Stevie's tail up and around twice because of the length. Sometimes you may need to go around 3 times. If you have some extras, you're going to go around twice, but you're going to go through a different part of the braid so that it doesn't get too bulky in one spot, because that'll cause some pulling on his hairs in a way that's not, letting that hair fall naturally. And you want his tail to kind of hang as naturally as possible so that the whole thing doesn't irritate him having his tail up in this little bundle. So I'm going to finish this off and wrap it up with some vet wrap. Vet wrap is not actually my product of choice for wrapping up tails because it tends to wear thin and become so that you kind of have to get in there with scissors sometimes and cut it off, which I don't like to do because there's always a risk of cutting the horse's tail. And my product of choice is actually a product called Guard Tex, and it is a fabric that is like vet wrap. It sticks to itself, which is nice, but it doesn't wear out as quickly as the vet wrap. So I've taken the vet wrap through the top part of that braid, and I ask Stevie to hang in there, I'm almost done. So I've taken the vet wrap through the top part of that braid, and because vet wrap does stick to itself, I'm going to make sure that it's nice and wide through the top, by kind of pulling it apart and making sure it's really covering the top of the braid so no dirt and debris can get inside. Then I'm going to wrap it around the bottom first, and then I'm going to come around the top kind of high. Remember, everything's going to slide down and loosen up, and so make everything tight and higher than you think you need it, and then that way it'll kind of shift on its own. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap this around pretty good several times and really make sure I get it covered so that I don't have to, worry about dirt getting in there and worry about the whole thing coming apart sooner than I want to have to redo it. So I'm going to go around. This is covered it about twice. I'm running out of vet wrap, and I probably have gone around, a half a roll of vet wrap or so. So keep it nice and clean and tidy. And then I get to the end, and I'm going to kind of smush it on there, make sure it's going to stay put. And then I'm going to pull out my handy dandy Sharpie. And if you've got a barn full of these, tails that you have to keep track of when the last time you washed them and so forth, take the lid off. You want to go ahead and mark the end. I like to mark the end so that I know where the end of my vet wrap is, and so when the vet wrap gets really dirty and you can't tell, that those two little L's will tell you where the end of your vet wrap is. And then I also like to put the date on it so that I know when the last time I washed his tail was. And so I'm going to mark it 3, 6, 12, just in case you go a whole year. But you want to put the date on it so that you know when to do it again. And then of course you want to let loose those feathers, and you can see that it's kind of nice to have all those feathers so that he has plenty to still swish around and keep the flies off of him. Alright, that's it. Stevie is happy that his tail's up and he's a show horse again. Thanks.